What's up, Falcons fans, and welcome to episode 14 of Talking Birdie, an Atlanta Falcons podcast powered by sportstalkatl.com. I am your host, Matt Caroley. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Caroley, Caroley spelled Karolly. I'm joined as usual by my two co-hosts from the Sports Talk ATL team, Jake Gordon. You can find him on Twitter at Can'tGuardJake, and Alex Lord. You can find him on Twitter at Go, spelled Geaux, Sports Talk. And tonight's episode is the very first episode of the 2021 regular NFL season. Yes, the season's finally here. Falcons opened up training camp last Thursday from Flowery Branch. And, you know, as much as I like speculation season, which is the time between the Super Bowl and training camp, it is finally great to have some tangible football content to digest. And one of the main drivers behind that content is our very special guest tonight. He is one of the newest members of the Atlanta Falcons beat. He is digital managing editor of AtlantaFalcons.com, Scott Bair. Scott, thank you so much for carving out some time in your busy schedule that's probably only going to get busier from this point on. So we're glad to catch you while we can now. But thanks for being here. How you doing tonight?
I mean, I get to watch football and then talk about it all night, so I can't really complain about that.
It doesn't get much better than that,
no
right?
matter how much you're like, okay, I'm on my fifth post of the day. I can't see straight. I forgot if I goes before E, except after C, it all gets very blurry. But nonetheless, we're still here talking sports, and that's awesome. And I've really enjoyed getting to know this Falcons team since I started back on June 1st, and really kind of getting to see a lot of you guys engage with the fans on Twitter. And that's what I'm most excited about, right? Is talking to the fans, talking to the fan base, and just kind of hearing what they want to know about, like that's my primary goal here. And, so I'm just trying to listen and read as much as I can. And I'm definitely happy to join you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited to have you here on the podcast, but yeah, especially on the Falcons beat. I've enjoyed your content thus far, your training camp previews. Especially enjoyed your piece with Terry Fontenot, giving us, fans and all access pass behind the curtain with him. And I thought that piece in general was very telling because, one of the biggest storylines this off season was, are the Falcons going to turn the page on the Matt Ryan era? Are they going to rebuild or are they going to reload? And I thought that piece kind of confirmed a lot of the speculation that I had been talking about on Twitter, since the offseason started, since, Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith were hired, is that they believe in Matt Ryan. They showed it a little bit in March when they restructured his deal. They showed it in the draft when they selected Kyle Pitts 4th overall. And then, in your interview with Terry, he kind of mentioned how much that they believe in Matt and they believe they can win with him. And so I just think that confirms that, Matt Ryan will finish out his career in Atlanta. I mean, it remains to be seen, but the early indications is, they believe they can win with him. So I know we'll talk about that more. And before we get into, kind of the Falcons talk with you, I want to give you an opportunity. I know you wrote an introductory piece, Scott, kind of letting the fans know a little bit about yourself and, your time in the Bay Area covering, most, if not all, the Bay Area teams. But for those that missed the piece, for those that don't know a lot about you, I'll give the floor to you as far as talking about your journey a little bit through the sports media industry and, maybe give a glimpse into the future on what Falcons fans can expect with your content over at AtlantaFalcons.com.
Well, that's very kind of you guys to let me do it, and I'll try to give you the Cliff's Notes versions. That's very rare for me. I'm a bit of a talker. Nonetheless, I've been in the game for about 20 years, which makes me feel really old at this point. And I've been covering the NFL for 15-ish. I did the San Diego Chargers for 5. Then they moved. Then I did the Raiders for 8. And then they moved. We catching a theme here. And then I picked up and did the San Francisco 49ers from the Super Bowl run on forward to their injury-riddled disaster of last year. And then decided to pick up the family and move 2,577 miles, according to the Maps app that I have on my phone, and came out to Georgia to join a Falcons team that is hell-bent on doing something different. And that's what I really liked. I never thought I would join a team site. Never thought I would work for the man, so to speak. But nonetheless, they want to do some cool and different stuff. We're going to act, not exactly like an independent outlet, right? We're probably not going to tip our hand about which guy who's questionable is going to play on Sunday. We're probably not going to say exactly who Terry Fontenot is going to draft the day before the draft, but we're going to give awesome creative content with tons of exclusive access. And we're in the process right now. We've got some announcements hopefully coming soon on new staff that's coming into town. So definitely keep an eye on the website for that. And yeah, man, that's really what we're trying to do. I can explain all the details, but the bottom line is we're just going to produce awesome stuff. Like, that's the only goal. That's what I keep telling everybody. And we're not going to be like hot take artists. I hate people that like sit behind a keyboard in their mom's basement, probably with the door closed, and fire off hot takes. That's not going to be us. Really just try to, but we're also going to be fair, right? If Matt Ryan throws a fourth quarter interception that, torpedoes the Falcons' chance of victory, we got to explain why that happened. And we're going to paint the fullest, clearest picture of why that's going to happen. What you're not going to get is a bunch of that, what you get at some other team sites, which is a lot of propaganda and marketing and things like that. We're not going to do that. So it is a fine line. We're going to walk it, and we're going to walk it well. So, and I definitely have really enjoyed getting to know Falcons fans thus far, trying to get out in the street. Pretty much like if you're wearing a Falcons hat, I'm probably going to stop you, ask you to take a survey. But nonetheless, really just try to get to know this fan base, see what it wants, and really what it's looking forward to as we transition here to a new regime, same quarterback. And you brought up a great point, Matt. They're not rebuilding. I covered the Raiders, and they stripped that thing down to the studs, man. It was a dead money disaster, unlike many teams have ever seen. So I've seen what happens there when you just kind of throw up your hands. You say, we're going to get right with the cap, and we're going to start from nothing, and welcome to 3-13, right? And an 0-10 and those types of things. Terry's not going to do it that way. And maybe it's a little harder. Maybe it's a little trickier when you have to start adding up the numbers. But I respect the fact that it's a team that lost a bunch of one-score games. You flip some of those scores, you're in a different space, and maybe they feel like they can turn things around quicker.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an exciting time. Change is not always a bad thing. I mean, we got a new regime in here, Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith. I, for one, am very bullish on it, but definitely exciting to have a new media team here too, and to see what you guys got cooking up. But I, for one, couldn't be more thrilled and excited for it. So let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's get into the Falcons talk. Part of the reason that training camp is great for content and just a great time to evaluate a football team is just because there's a certain handful of players each year, like the Matt Ryans, like the Grady Jarrett's, Calvin Ridley's. Their positions on the roster, they're standing on the roster, is secured. But it's a 90-man roster to start. That means a lot of guys are vying for roster spots. And, I always like to see the stock up and stock down reports that come out of these training camp practices. So I kind of want to start the conversation there. We heard the likes of Chris Williamson, cornerback, TJ Green, safety, wide receiver, Austin Trammell. They seem to be the week one winners. So I want to get your thoughts, Scott. Who did you see stand out the most and benefited most from the first week of camp, and even throw in today's first padded practice as we record this on Tuesday?
Yeah, if we're looking at it from guys who are maybe kind of fighting to make a roster spot, I look at two undrafted runners, Caleb Huntley and Javian Hawkins. Javian Hawkins, who I guess Arthur Smith calls Little Hawk because there's too many J. Hawkins on this roster to be able to keep track of them all. But he's the reason why I really like Hawkins is he's a different style of runner. He's not the tallest drink of water, but he's quick through a hole. He's confident. He's confident in his decisions. He's agile. I saw him make a great jump cut the other day, and you look at that running back spot, right? And you think, hey, well, Mike Davis is going to get the first shot at being that feature back, and you have Allison there and Patterson. It'll be interesting to see how they use him, but I think that one of these undrafted guys is going to end up on the team. It's just my gut instinct, and I really like Hawkins, so I think that's somebody definitely worth keeping an eye on. This group we all know what happened with the secondary with the pass defense last year, right? Not great. So they brought in a lot of new bodies, some veterans and some younger guys to fill this thing out. You brought up Chris Williamson. I know he's a draft pick. He's going to make the team, but Darren Hall is all over the place, right? He's just everywhere he's supposed to be, and he looks like an ideal modern cornerback. I think that's good. Those guys have been impressive. you look at the tight end group, it's going to be hard to make the team there, right? But I think they have a lot of opportunities. Assuming they keep 4 tight ends, which means they're going to keep Pitts, Hurst, and Smith. You look at Jaden Graham; he's going to have to work for his gig a little bit. Those wide receivers, Frank Darby was drafted. He's going to have to work, to maintain that spot. So those are the guys that I've been kind of looking at. You didn't hear me mention the offensive or defensive lineman yet. I'm a little cautious about making evaluations on guys when I've only seen them in pads once. And first day of pads is it's like my summer Christmas, right? I love it. Just seeing guys go heads up and really ramp up the physicality. I got to talk to Arthur, man. They had all the one-on-one rush drills in the far right corner. You needed binoculars and a 10-foot ladder just to be able to see it. Come on, Arthur, bring it back to the people. We need to see those drills.
On the flip side, Scott, any players whose stock, in your opinion, dropped a bit? Maybe notably the guys that are on PUP, injured list, who maybe took a step back?
Yeah, it's interesting to try to evaluate, kind of where they are. Arthur Smith made it very clear. And he's, again, when he goes to the podium, right, he's talking to us. He's also maybe talking to the players a little bit, just, trying to motivate one way or the other. So when he says Dante Fowler is going to have to earn his role, I absolutely believe him. He's trying to foster some competition there. But not seeing Dante Fowler early, I think, is a disappointment. And it's an unfortunate thing that he's on the COVID list. The right tackle spot, Jalen Mayfield's obviously playing there because Caleb McGarry has been on PUP. We think he's coming back relatively quickly. Matt Gano, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Matt, you've been all over that one. Nonetheless, I think that they could use some depth at the outside tackle spot. That's a bit of a concern. You always hate to point out young guys trying to find their way. I think it's Ryan Becker has put the ball on the ground a couple times. That's not really that good. So some of those things you think these guys, it's not the end of the world. It's week 1. But some guys definitely need to kind of ratchet things up a little bit. When you look at this wide receiver core, right, if you consider some givens at the top of the depth chart, the back of that depth chart, assuming they keep 5, maybe 6, I don't know. It's going to be fierce back there for who gets those roster spots. And the one thing I caution, I'm sure you guys will say the same thing, is don't fall in love with an undrafted wideout in week 1 because he had a big play in the fourth quarter, right? Don't do it. Resist the urge. But nonetheless, there's going to be a lot of competition there and a lot of competition within the defensive backfield. So I think all those things are important. But back to the original point, I'm dying to see Dante Fowler, man. I've seen him at his best, his 11.5 sack awesomeness with the Rams. The Falcons desperately need him to get back to that.
Yeah, you mentioned you covered the Chargers, the Raiders, and the 49ers, particularly that Super Bowl season I'm referencing. What are your first impressions of Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot as leaders as well as, X's and O's guys compared to past places you've covered? The Chargers and Raiders weren't quite as successful as that 49er Super Bowl team. So maybe talk a little bit about that comparison directly.
Yeah, Shanny is Kyle Shanahan I'm referring to. It was, you guys know from his time as a Falcons coordinator. I'm not sure how Falcons fans feel about him, but how they feel about him in San Francisco is the guy's a wizard, and he can make a lot of average running backs look pretty good and do a lot of fun things with an offensive line to keep that. I'm big on 3.5, 4 yards in a cloud of dust. If you can't do that, you're going to struggle. If you can do that really well, you're going to keep the chains moving, you're going to keep the ball, and you're going to be successful. So in terms of how they run practices and things like that, John Lynch is he's a gregarious type. He's very good in front of cameras. I think they have a good partnership. And while they didn't come in at the same time, they are basically in lockstep. They're on the same page. And I use that to compare it to Arthur Smith out here and Terry Fontenot. They came in at the exact same time and didn't know each other. And that may seem unusual. I think it's not a bad thing because you get guys coming from different places and trying to find a shared vision. And that shared vision, it's going to sound really basic and sound like every football coach obviously wants this, but they made a real conscious effort. They want to get bigger and tougher and more physical. And of course, that means the obvious things physically. I think if I want to maybe add some conjecture to what he's talking about, but don't you think they also have to get a little tougher mentally, right? That last year there were too many one-score games lost, too many leads lost, too many of those types of things happening. And I think this new coaching staff is going to come in here and, maybe it's less about brotherhood, more about accountability here, about really having to earn your keep and having to do the right things. And that's going to form a brotherhood on its own if you can trust the guys next to you to execute and to own up for when they don't. So I think for those reasons, I really like it. Arthur Smith, the more of his offense that I watch, the more I really think it's interesting. And everybody wants to say, all right, well, are we going to see a carbon copy version of what we saw with the Titans? Probably not. And I think that's good because good coaches are not supposed to shove a scheme down your throat. Chip Kelly used to do that. He did that in San Francisco. That's not what it's about. It's about playing to your players' strengths. It's about calling plays that can help your own people excel. And I think Arthur Smith is going to be really good at that. You look at the positions of strength, and I think he's going to help them. We haven't even gotten to Dean Pease yet. Man, the more people on the inside of the NFL that I talk to, he's one of those guys, like he's a coach that other coaches like. Right. And I think that's a good thing. So I think it's a great question in terms of a comparison. I think with Shanahan and Smith, it's different offenses, but it's two young guys who are, offensive masterminds, who are who are head coaches for the first time, trying to establish themselves. And I think maybe they do it slightly different ways, but I think that those unique characteristics and traits are something that will drive the 49ers if they can ever get healthy and will drive this Falcons team, assuming they can continue stacking draft classes. And that's where Terry pops in, right? You got to continue. That's how you build a good team. It's not by spending a bunch of money in free agency. It's by stacking draft classes, being laser focused in March, and building depth and rewarding your own. Those are the most important things. I spent a lot of time with Terry Fontenot. You guys saw a couple stories on that. There's one more to come on AtlantaFalcons.com. And it's very clear to me, his team building vision is about building up this team around Matt Ryan, right? But then Matt Ryan's not going to play forever. He's not going to play when he's 56, let's say. And he wants a strong team around whomever that next quarterback is, right? So, of course, you need a quarterback. And you need a quarterback of the future. And you need a quarterback of the future's quarterback of the future. That's how the world works. You want to go from Favre to Rodgers. You want to go from Manning to Luck. That's what you want to do. You want to go from Ryan to X. Like, you want that next guy. And the only way to help them is to build up the team around them. I think them being committed to that is the smart and right way to go.
All right, so I'm going to lob you the softest of softballs that ever existed. Talk about the week Kyle Pitts has had.
Gosh, he's just been terrible. I mean, he's dropping balls. he's dropping them on the ground. He's run about 12,000 laps because of the false starts. I just don't get what everybody sees in this guy. Please don't make that a pull quote. Nonetheless, I mean, the guy's, I don't know. I feel like everybody calls him a freak and a unicorn and all those things. And they're all pretty accurate. I wish I could come up with a different term for it. I welcome people just to log on to Twitter. I think the Falcons posted a video of this catch he made today that they start in real time, then they go into slow motion to see all the intricacies of making the catch. I watched it in real time, and I was with a couple other people on the beat there, and we all just kind of looked at each other like, do we just see that? Because it wasn't just the fact that Matt Ryan basically threw an alley-oop that a guy who's 6'6" with 8-foot arms could actually get, that it knocked off of somebody's knee and bounced up. And while he's falling, he still has the chance to catch the ball, right? Now, that's one play in July, August, whatever day this is. I don't know in camp. That's cool, right? That's not anything else, but that's one of those kind of maybe glimpses into what he can be. And you got to get excited about that, right? You just don't have a choice. This guy's, I think he has all the tools to be a fantastic pro, but you can say all those things. And then you can come to reality a little bit and say he's never taken an NFL snap, that some of the best NFL Hall of Fame tight ends in their first year have not produced like crazy. And you can offer words of caution. And I think that the Falcons are doing an appropriate job of, while understanding his talent. Okay. You can't dismiss what those of us saw or what everybody can see on social media right now. You can't take that away. Can't say, well, he's not going to be very good, or maybe he needs some time to develop. No, the guy's gifted. But I also think that the Falcons are doing a good job of kind of keeping him focused on football, of trying to keep the expectations and the hype train out of it. I mean, everybody's got a phone. Mine's right there. It's close to everyone. Kyle's got one too, and he probably hits his mentions on Twitter. If he's like me, it's about an embarrassing number of times per day. So he sees that stuff. He knows about the expectations, and the pressure has worn on people without good mental fortitude. But everything I've heard about this kid is, not only is he immensely talented, he's a hard worker, he's a grinder. He doesn't act too big for his britches. And I think he has, from what I've heard, what we're still, time will tell, but from what I've heard, maybe does have what it takes, kind of mentally block all that extra stuff out and really focus on the game.
So this next question, Scott, I don't know how much you can provide for us, but for me, one of the storylines that kind of snuck up on me, and I think snuck up on a lot of people, is, Caleb McGarry and this mysterious absence. And Arthur Smith's been pretty tight-lipped about it. And again, I don't know what more you can add than he added in his press conferences. But if you can't add anything, I guess maybe I'll transition the question to, is this the tight-lipped nature? Is that something maybe we should expect from Arthur Smith? I mean, in you getting to know him, just like we're all getting to know him, is it going to be pretty private around the media sessions as far as injuries go and the nature surrounding their player statuses?
Yeah, I think that's interesting to tell. I think I covered John Gruden before this, and Kyle Shanahan. Those guys are very honest. Heck, I mean, Kyle may even tell you the play call and then run it and see if you can stop it before 4 yards. But nonetheless, it's something that even John Gruden did, where during training camp, you are under no obligation to say anything about injuries. There's no rule about it. There's nothing that you have to do. And I think a lot more coaches than maybe we realize abide by those things. And so I'm not necessarily just outright defending him, but I'm just saying that I think that that's become maybe more normal. I mean, what's going on at right tackle? Arthur was asked about that again on Tuesday afternoon, and basically just said that he should be coming along, and he's doing everything he's being asked to do. That's all that he can do. I think if we were to go back a couple weeks ago, I think if we're giving credit where credit's due, the Athletics' Troy McElhaney was the first one to make notice of, okay, like we're all thinking about left guard as the big competition spot where Jalen Mayfield's going to make an impact. And she said, maybe take a look at right tackle, right? I think she might've been right on there. And when Caleb does come back, if he and Jalen are probably going to battle it out. So I think that will be an interesting spot to watch no matter what. You always got to watch. Do you think that was by design? Because I know when Mayfield was drafted, Arthur Smith was pretty adamant about they got a plan for him, and they mentioned that plan being left guard. But sometimes plans change. Do you think that's just an effect of these absences from McGarry and from Gano, that their plan has changed and now they have no choice but to put the college right tackle at right tackle, or they saw something else maybe? I don't know if you can elaborate on that from what you've seen at camp and throughout OTAs and all that. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that's a really good question to ask, about. I asked, again, all these days run together. I did ask where he thought Jalen was better suited, at guard or tackle. And he said that kind of time will tell in that regard. They are just getting to work with him. And it could be out of necessity. They've lost a swing tackle and they're without currently a starting right tackle. So they've got some work to do there, and they need a body, and they have a guy who can do it and has played a lot there. So it makes a lot logical sense. It'll be interesting to see what happens after Caleb comes back and how much that competition really turns into a knockdown, drag out fight. But it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. I don't know if it's necessarily by design or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of they have a versatile guy. They prize versatility, and maybe with the injury situation at tackle, they're thankful that they have some versatility there. I think those things will, benefit the team moving forward. And it's one of those things where, Caleb will be ready when he's ready. And he'll come in and he'll, I've never met a football player that's going to be like, yeah, here, take my starting spot. He's going to get after it. And I think that's going to be interesting and maybe, bring the best out of both guys.
Yeah. So I'll keep it in the trenches. Let me preface my question by saying this. I see the defensive front as, you have Dante Fowler, who's definitely going to lock down one side of the edge. You said, there's competition brewing, but, he's really the guy. And besides Grady Jarrett, there's a lot of, I call it fluid. It's going to be very fluid along the defensive front with guys like Means, Kaminsky, JTM, Ogundeji. They all have inside-outside versatility. They can go from the interior to the exterior week to week. There's not going to be somebody opposite Dante Fowler rushing every single third down. It's going to change based on the offensive scheme. And talk a little bit about how do you see it similarly, that there's a lack of talent maybe to win one-on-ones, and how Dean Pease is going to move these guys around?
I think it'll be, to that last point, I think it will be interesting to see how he arranges things. We all know the reputation and kind of the bullet points on a Dean Pease defense is unpredictable, creative blitzes coming from everywhere, multiple fronts, multiple coverages, those types of things. Along that defensive front, it's, that they have Dante Fowler, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that he's going to be a big part of their pass rush, because for all the creative blitzes, sometimes on 3rd and 8, you're going to need to rush 4 and you're going to need to get home, and you're going to need to put 8 back and be good in coverage. That's just, fundamental football, and you have to be good in those areas. And Grady Jarrett's going to have to be himself, but those guys, or Grady can't do it alone. I agree with wholeheartedly. It's about, within this scheme, everybody taking the next step up. And while I'm new here, right, I noticed, Marlon Davidson is another guy that's in this mix. I talked to him earlier this week, wrote a story about him, and he was kind of fully admitted, look, he got injured and he got COVID, and he told me that he got COVID, I should say, and he admitted he got caught up in the lifestyle a little bit, right? But this guy is better than 8 tackles over 8 games. He just is. They didn't mess up the talent evaluation on a guy that was a 5-star recruit, basically, at the hospital before he got taken home. I mean, the guy's a raw freak athlete who can do a lot of good things. And I think, to answer your question directly, I think the defensive line collectively they definitely need to raise their game. No, I don't want to get lost in numbers, because numbers can tell you anything. But if you go back and you look at their sack total, you're like, okay. But they had a lot of quarterback pressures. They were, I think, 9th in the NFL in quarterback pressures, hurries, hits, and sacks combined. But you got to finish. You got to get home a little bit more. So they do need to find a rotation. I can think of lots. For every defensive line that's like the Rams, right, and is Donald and Quinn and Fowler when he was there, you've got another line with one good edge guy and a solid rotation of guys that, unless you have all their football cards, you probably don't know who they are. And that's what the Falcons have to develop here, is they need to develop that good rotation, that keeping guys fresh. And yeah, man, winning one-on-one battles. And if Grady Jarrett's job is to take up 2 or 3 guys so the other defensive interior guy can get home, that's going to be important. I don't think I'm saying anything off base by saying that if the Falcons are going to be competitive, the pass defense has to improve, and that's rushing coverage. The oldest cliche in the book. Sorry about that, but it's true. And they definitely need better. They need better from I think scheme is going to help. And if they're a better collective rotation, I think we can expect better results.
I feel like I might already know the answer to this question, but I feel like I have to ask. So obviously there's a backup quarterback competition. AJ McCarron's the heavy favorite. He's probably going to come out of camp as the backup quarterback. But do you think there's any chance that Felipe Franks does sneak in there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to watch out for. The one thing you have to evaluate, it seems to become less trendy to keep 3 quarterbacks anymore. That extra roster spot is valuable. I've covered AJ before when he was in Oakland, and I think he's a very good backup quarterback that should you need to put him in, he can get you through a game or a half or anything that you need. And if you're able to put Felipe on the practice squad, right, and keep him around and keep developing him in opportunities where you can, that's probably the best possible solution. You never know how things go in the preseason, man. It's just strange things happen. So I never want to guarantee anything, but I do think that the depth chart's going to work out that way. Ryan, veteran rookie, it seems like it's, how it's going to play out. But the one thing is, if you're going to foster competition, then you got to back it up, right? Then you got to play the best guy, no matter what the situation is. And I think Arthur Smith and his coaching staff are going to do that. And I think that's important.
I want to bring up one thing specifically. You say fostering competition, and I am really curious about Fabian Moreau. Do you think he's going to be the boundary guy? And do you think that, it won't just be because the lack of competition there? He really earned that, boundary spot. It wasn't just given to him almost. There wasn't another guy challenging him for it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of those things where we've seen Fabian with the first team the entire time. He's the guy with the experience, and it would make sense for him to be with the first team now. A lot of the younger guys, with the exception of Kyle Pitts and Jalen Mayfield, are not in that position. So I think that's something, I hate to say this because I think it's not a fun answer, but we're going to have to see it play out a little bit. Kendall Sheffield, you wonder, is he going to kind of take that spot back? Isaiah Oliver has been playing inside with the first team to this point, where Fabian has experience. I thought he might bounce inside and out, and that really hasn't been the case to this point. But again, it's one of those things where it's early, so we can talk about that. I think Darren Hall's always in the right spot, right? And maybe over games and over time that will play out enough to change the coaches' minds. So I think it's possible, or maybe after a couple games, it's possible to make a switch. But to answer your question directly, and I think you're onto something there, that right now Fabian's the veteran, been through the offseason program. Let's try him out there and see how he kind of sticks with it. So it's kind of a combination of both things that you're thinking. He's the first option as the experienced guy. Can anybody come up and realistically and seriously chase him down far enough to get rid of that experience factor that's going to be important when you're covering a deep route and you got to be in the right spot. It's about trust, and right now his experience, I think, makes him the most trustworthy for that first team spot. First team's generally been static on both sides of the ball. We'll see if that changes, and when they mix and match guys, how the young guys do.
So Scott, I don't know if you're much of a prediction guy, but we have to ask. We've asked a lot of our guests that we brought on throughout the offseason. Maybe not give us a record prediction, but what is your expectations year one of this Falcons team? Do you think there's a path that they can get back into the playoffs as early as 2021?
Yeah, here's the way that I'll say it. A lot of beat writers, I've probably fallen victim to this once or twice, where you have kind of like a team that was down on its luck the year before, and you always go like a game above 500. Like that's like the cool thing to do. I'm not necessarily going to do that. I'm not really going to throw a record prediction out there because there's so many variables. But the over/under 7, and we're talking about a 17-game season here. I think with a new coaching staff and a new mentality and a new defensive coordinator that I just trying to figure it out, I have a lot of respect for. I'm going to take the over on that. I think that's probably the best way that I could put it. How much farther over always depends upon how well situated, how confident, how well coached, how well they execute, how well conditioned they are in the fourth quarter. You guys have seen a lot of Falcons games recently. Some of those fourth quarters have ended in unflattering situations. I was in a Buffalo Wild Wings at the Mall of Georgia the other day, and they played that Cowboys-Falcons game. And I'm like, just change the channel, dude.
Yeah.
It's on NFL Network or something. And those are the types of memories, A, you don't want to relive, and B, you don't want to happen again. So it's about instituting that again, when we went back to 20 minutes ago when I was like, I think they want to find, this is Terry's term, that he doesn't want to find just the most talented 53. He wants to find the right 53 guys who are accountable, guys you can trust when everything's on the line in the fourth quarter. They've got to do better there. If they did better there last year, we'd be talking about a lot different season. And I think because of that, if you can get tougher when it matters most, and Kyle Pitts things, and they can establish the run game and get cranked up a bit in the pass rush. I know that's a lot of ifs, but nonetheless, I think there is a path here to a solid and successful start to the Fontenot-Smith regime. I think it's right there if properly executed.
Well, Scott, I could probably listen to you go on about Falcons and football for forever. We've kept you a little bit longer than we led you on to believe, but we appreciate how gracious you've been with your time. Before we get you out of here, one, make sure follow Scott on Twitter at Scott Bair, Bair spelled Bair NFL on Twitter. You know where to find him at AtlantaFalcons.com. But anything you want to plug? I know you teased a couple things upcoming, but anything you're most excited about you want to plug before?
Yeah, we're assembling the Avengers. We're gonna have a very deep squad very soon.
Nice.
Good for my sleep habits, and we've got some podcasts coming. Some new podcast offerings. One right after a game, and one kind of midweek that I think is going to be a lot of fun. So just kind of stay tuned to the website, and again, it kept me a little long. I don't know, sitting around talking about football with people that know what they're talking about, like that's what I like to do. So, Jake, Alex, Matt, it's been awesome, man. You ever want me back on, go ahead and do it. Awesome. It's been a great conversation, and I'll definitely be listening. I can't stand the sound of my own voice, but maybe the next episode I can get you on that one.
Sounds good. Well, we're definitely going to take you up on that offer at some point during the season, Scott. So we really appreciate it. Have a good night. Get some sleep. You got another busy day ahead of you. I know tomorrow at practice. So.
All right. Thanks, boys.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Well, we thank Scott once again. Great interview. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll make sure we get him on again. But definitely check out all the content going on at AtlantaFalcons.com. Before we close up, there's a couple additional things me, Jake, and Alex want to talk about. Centering again around some of the stuff that Scott was talking about. With week one of training camp, it's a time for guys to jockey for positions. Earn roster spots, guys to solidify starting spots. But two questions I want to throw out there. We'll start first. With you, Jake, and the question is, what news excited you most out of Falcons training camp week one?
I'd say probably the biggest thing is, for the most part, everybody that participated stayed healthy. We've had plenty of issues this offseason. I didn't want to see any injuries. I think that was the main thing, is that everybody made it through without anything crazy happening. We came in with a few injuries. As long as we didn't leave with any more, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I think that's especially important. You see what's going on with the Colts. Andrew Luck, Quentin Nelson suffering back-to-back days the same foot injury that's going to keep them out for 5 to 12 weeks. I mean, that really is the most important thing at a training camp. Yes, you want to see guys do well, but you want to see them survive this period. You want to see them get through preseason unscathed and have a healthy roster heading into the season, because we know it's a game of attrition. And, we talked about, I think, with Trevor on, with the Bucs interview, is you need a bit of luck to go your way. And that luck often stems or comes out in the form of injury luck. So again, that's a great first starting point as far as news excite you. Alex, what excited you most? Training camp week one.
Scott's piece on Marlon Davidson should spark a lot of optimism for Falcons fans. He mentioned, a good rotation along the defensive front, but you want that rotation to be behind two solidified starters. And if Marlon Davidson is, as mentally healthy as he claims he is, and can establish himself physically next to Grady Jarrett, I mean, it's going to do wonders for this defense. It really is. I think that's got to be, can't be taken lightly that he's in a better headspace than he was his rookie year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. I mean, a lot of people, I think, forgot about Marlon Davidson throughout this offseason. I'm glad he's getting, the light of day now with, Scott's piece on him and, some of the other media coverage and us obviously talking about him here on the podcast. But yeah, we've talked Grady Jarrett needing a running mate for the longest time. And Davidson could be that guy. I mean, he's got the draft pedigree for it. Scott pointed out, he's a 5-star high school recruit. So he's been a stud pretty much everywhere he's gone. And it was unfortunate. You kind of knew when anytime a rookie misses time, that's probably the worst thing that can happen for a rookie. And glad, he's kind of maturing in the fact that, he realizes, what had happened in year one and hopefully year two, you can see that progression, because that's kind of what excites me a little bit about this defense. I mean, I think the interior guys, we talk a lot about the edge guys and the lack of depth there, but I think there's a lot of guys on this interior, that can produce. I mean, I wanted to point out when Scott was talking about the pass rush, I think this Falcons defense is going to be greater than the sum of their parts. And what I mean by that is I think they have a bunch of guys that can get 4 sacks. They might not have guys that can get you 8, 9, 10 sacks, but you got Davidson that can get you 4 sacks. You got Grady Jarrett. He's done it countless seasons. He can get you 4 sacks. Kaminsky, I mean, seeing some of the one-on-ones with him.
Yeah, I saw him take
the one against
for a ride.
The one against Lindstrom was impressive. I mean, you could say it's a bad look by Lindstrom, but iron sharpens iron, and getting that punch on a guy of Lindstrom's caliber, I mean, that sparks optimism. So you got him. Dante Fowler can get you 4. I think Stephen Means can get you 4. Who knows? Teotihuacan Mariner maybe gets you close to that point. So, they can be a productive unit as a whole. They might not have the individual horses, but coupled with Dean Pease scheme and pressure packages, I think they can put together a pass rush. And that's why I'm not as concerned with that aspect of it as I am as maybe other certain aspects of the roster, whether it be the, unproven cornerback depth or, God forbid Josh Andrews is going to be the left guard. I can't belabor that point enough, but I'm hoping something becomes of that situation. We'll see. I think Marlon Davidson and his improvements and him coming into shape, looking the way he is great. For me, I could take it in two directions. AJ Tyrell, being poised to make that second year leap. I know Scott's written a bunch of times on AJ Tyrell and how impressed he has been with them, and he just shows that confidence that you want from a cornerback one. And all the talk that surrounded him being a reach last year, man, I can't wait to see Tyrell, kind of shut those people up, and hopefully once and for all, we no longer see any tweets about, oh, Falcons fans are miserable that they didn't take CeeDee Lamb. Like, that's one of probably my top. I don't know if we talked about it ever. I mean, we've only done a couple of just stop tweetings, but that's up there on the list for me.
I got one from that draft. I don't know why I see so much Vikings Twitter, but I follow so much Green Bay Twitter. I see Vikings Twitter inherently. And there was a tweet about Jeff Gladney, and they were like, God, thank the Falcons for drafting AJ Tyrell, not Jeff Gladney.
Well, yeah, and I'm right there with you on that, because that was my prediction. I think the final mock draft I've ever done was I had Jeff Gladney being that round one corner. And it's just some of the things, as Twitter analysts or whatever you want to call us. You can't get all of it right because we don't have all of the facts. We're not in the interview rooms. We don't know what kind of character these guys are. And I know, Jason Butt, who I've, former Falcons beat writer from The Athletic, who I've developed kind of a relationship with, he mentioned to me that there was quite a few cornerbacks that the Falcons had flags on for character concerns. And that was part of the reason that led them to Tyrell was, Gladney had character concerns. They felt Christian Fulton had character concerns.
Damon Arnett.
I can tell you from classes with Christian Fulton. I had classes for 2.5 years with Christian Fulton, and only from a classroom perspective, not impressive. And we weren't in hard classes, obviously, but it just there were other football players, that were showing more respect as far as to the professor or whatnot.
Right.
With that being said, he said, he's ascending quite a bit on as far as Titans beat writers go, they say.
Well, yeah. And again, I was high on Christian Fulton. I feel like I had him cornerback one, I think, in that class, honestly. or 2 probably after Jeff Kuda. But I mean, those are the things we don't know as a whole when we're covering the draft. Is we don't know that the personality traits does so much. We only get hearsay. So
yeah, let me get everybody's physicals back before I start my mock draft.
Yeah,
right. So
gotta get my hands on you.
Again, we certainly dodged the bullet there, and Vikings, credit to them for doing the right thing and acting swiftly. But
go back to the guy real quick. The guy that the CeeDee Lamb tweet. I feel bad for him in a way, because when one of your tweets just leaks over to another fan base, pretty much, and you just get tore up like that.
Watch out.
But also, it's a stupid tweet because, like, I'm sorry, it is. Hindsight's.
Well, and he's not the only one that's been doing it. Like, I think a PFF guy did it the other day too.
Maybe Jason Whitlock. Somebody else said it too. It's just dumb.
Well, again, it's dumb. Fine. Just talk up that player. Like, CeeDee Lamb's dominating camp, but
what are you talking about?
AJ Tyrell. AJ Terrell's having a hell of a camp right now, and again, that's one of the things I'm most excited about. The other thing, again, it's hard not to talk about Kyle Pitts again. I mean, Jake, you asked Scott, and he pretty much said yes in not so many words or more words, but him being as advertised, that catch today. I mean, I tweeted it out, and I kind of stole the quote from Pitts' college coach. Is for most guys that's a 50-50 ball, but for Kyle Pitts that's an 80-20 ball, and you saw it on display. And again, it's unfortunate how the Julio Jones saga ended, but Kyle Pitts is going to be that type of player for Atlanta and is going to help us forget about Julio Jones a little bit quicker than maybe other teams or you'd be accustomed to. So again, it's great to see him off to a great start, and hearing how much he's being moved around in Arthur Smith's offense, like that's just music to our ears. I mean, because if Dirk Cutter was still here, Kyle Pitts would be positioned in one place and one place only, and you wouldn't take advantage of his full skill set.
They'd be in line on the right side, running 3 routes with no hot routes, no nothing.
He'd probably have him blocking a good bit too to try to surprise the defense.
I
should have asked Scott about that a little more. I should have said something about him being moved around, but it is what it is.
No. Scott gave us a great bit of information there. I mean, it was great. But, it's great to see Kyle Pitts as advertised thus far. So let's go to the flip side. The other question, and Alex, I'll let you start. What news worried you most out of Falcons Week 1 training camp?
So I kind of cheated a little bit, and this was that last question I asked Scott about, was the boundary corner opposite AJ Tyrell. He's just so eloquent when he speaks. I had to ask him. I needed to know because I didn't want to just talk about it without having a different opinion. But basically, I'm really concerned that there wasn't talk of Fabian Moreau or Darren Hall or Isaiah Alva or Kendall Sheffield, any of them, really shining opposite AJ Tyrell, because
he talked up Darren Hall quite a bit, which was
he did. I loved that.
I think he's the only one that really has, which was great insight there.
So to me, it seems like it's just got to be a lock until he really screws up. It's AJ Tyrell and Fabian Moreau in my eyes. Isaiah Oliver's at nickelback, but like I told you guys, way back when, that Darren Hall could be a 2-position starter on this defense eventually. He could start at cornerback and start at safety eventually. I think he's the real. I mean, Scott seems to think so. I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he said he was all over the field lends itself to maybe, he's being trained at a couple of positions. Certainly would like to see him start at boundary corner, just because again, that's one of the most valuable positions in a secondary, and again, we'll see what the future holds with Fabian Moreau. If he locks down that spot, then potentially, you're in a good position. Then you maybe re-sign him, and then you have great depth with Darren Hall behind him, or potentially taking over for Isaiah Oliver in the nickel, perhaps. So, Jake, what about you? News you're most worried about from Week 1?
Yeah, so Scott touched on this a little bit, and I trust Arthur Smith's judgment over my own, and there's a bit of a necessity with no Matt Gano and no Caleb McGarry. But I really wanted to see a little bit more of Jalen Mayfield on the inside and a little bit more of his development at that position. We've talked about it on the show before. It just kind of sucks. He has to play fill-in right now, and maybe the coaching staff does see him as competition at right tackle. But I personally, just my fan opinion, I would have liked to have seen him get some more snaps at left guard.
Agreed.
Yeah. Make it a clean sweep there. I'm I was disappointed by this development just because, again, if truly the plan was to have him at left guard and now the focus has shifted and now he's going to concentrate on right tackle for the foreseeable future, that hurts not only the current but the long-term vision for him. So again, just got to trust in the coach staff, trust in the process. So that was one of mine for me, was just, again, Mayfield being forced in that right tackle spot, the mysterious nature. Hopefully we get some more information on that. My head always tends to, as a Falcons fan, go to the negative. And, we know Caleb McGarry has a heart condition, and I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Again, all that Arthur Smith has really said is he's doing whatever he's been asked of. So we'll see. The other one that was, well, I put a couple actually on my list as well. Dante Fowler, Scott touched on it. That's extremely disappointing and does have his stock down a little bit. Your number one edge rusher landing on the COVID list first week of training camp. Not great, especially after your edge 2 guy you were counting on gets released because of legal matters that he's dealing with. So that's not great. And then lastly, I'll add in, we got this on day 1 when Arthur Blank was present. But we finally got confirmation that the Falcons did not want to trade Julio Jones. And it was all Julio driven. We speculated and suspected as such, but finally got, the real answer behind it. And again, I go back to the episode with Trevor when he was talking, and he's not alone in the thinking, but when it kind of gave mixed signals that, you don't take a quarterback, you take Kyle Pitts 4th overall, and then you trade your number 1 receiver in Julio Jones. It gives mixed signals, but it doesn't give mixed signals when they weren't the ones that wanted to pull that trigger. And it was player driven, and they acquiesced because, he is a 10-year vet that's going to be a Ring of Honor member, going to be a future Hall of Famer. You're going to acquiesce, and you don't want issues in the locker room when you're starting a new regime. So for me, it's disappointing, but at the same time, I think, again, we don't have the mixed signals. They really are trying to compete. They are trying to win. What Terry is saying is authentic, in my opinion, is they're trying to reload. They believe in what they have, despite Julio Jones not being there, is enough, especially on offense. I mean, Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Kyle Pitts, Hayden Hurst, stable of running backs. We know running back production is more driven based on scheme and blocking. And the blocking, I guess, is the one question.
It is the blocking, Matt, but Matt Ryan is better than 18 quarterbacks at least. I mean, that puts the Falcons in front of those already. This is a quarterback-driven league. It always will. It has been for the better part of the 2000s, and it will continue to be.
Well, and he's been that place among the quarterbacks with an offensive coordinator like Dirk Cutter. Now you add a very quarterback-friendly play caller in Arthur Smith, a scheme that's going to give him more play action, which benefits the quarterback, more wide-open looks, a la what Kyle Shanahan gave during his time in Atlanta. I mean, I tweeted out, a post from The Athletic before coming on the show. Tori McElhenney pointed out that Lee Smith, even a benefactor of some of the other weapons. And I believe she was alluding to the play I like to refer to as tight end leak, where, you kind of have, it's my favorite play. And we saw Kyle Shanahan run it a few times with Austin Hooper, Logan Paulson, I believe, tight ends that aren't really pass catchers. You just leak them out, you delay them out of the formation, and they're just wide open. We're going to see those types of plays with Arthur Smith, and that's going to lead to Matt Ryan even being more successful. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. Again, the one reason that could derail the offense, and again, it's going to be the offense that carries this team as it always has been, is the guys up front, is the scheme, is the coaching. And I tweeted this as well. We're really going to find out how good Dwayne Ledford is as an offensive line coach. I mean, we've talked him up. I've talked him up. But given the fact that you only have 2 solidified guys right now up front is a little concerning. I think that's probably, again, the most concerning news so far outside of training camp is that. And hopefully through practice, through guys coming back healthy, they get the right 5 guys, and hopefully they can develop that chemistry. And there's no further injuries. Because again, we saw in 2016, offensive line playing all 16 games together. That's huge. I mean, and those guys, they were good players, but they weren't world beaters. So
no, replaceable.
Yeah, I think that's
guys.
definitely the thing to monitor, on the offensive side of the ball. I think everything else will take care of itself. I did want to ask Scott about the running back situation a little bit more because of that Dante Foreman visit was a little curious, but I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, what that might mean if they were to sign him.
I mean, Arthur Smith has a type. I mean, that's as clear as day.
He's close to Derrick Henry size, right?
I mean, they're all massive. I mean, Mike Davis is a massive human being. Quadri Ellison is a massive.
Caleb Huntley's like 6'3", 225, 240. Yeah, he's a big guy too.
And that is what makes Javian Hawkins cool, which Scott noted. He's a different type of back, which is good. Right. You need that in an offense. So, that's fair. I mean, he's got a type. So.
Another point to that Matt Ryan thing is that, we saw what Arthur Smith could do for a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill. And I believe Ryan Tannehill is closer to what he was in Tennessee truly than what he was in Miami. I think Miami was just, it was coaching or, whatever have you. I mean, Adam Gase is probably not the best guy to be taking care of a young quarterback, as we've seen in 2 different cities now. So I think that Ryan Tannehill's ascension to now, a lot of people would say he's a little bit better than Matt Ryan. I don't have a dog in the fight. You guys would probably say Matt Ryan's a little bit better than Ryan Tannehill, but they're right in that same tier of quarterbacks. And again, just to your point, Matt Ryan is doing this with scrubs, with Dirk Cutter. I mean, I'm just, imagine what a competent quarterback can do with Arthur Smith. I mean, you kind of saw Ryan Tannehill's ascension, but Matt Ryan was already there. So, you know what you're going to get with Matt Ryan. I just think that it's a shame some people are picking the under for, 7 wins. That's ridiculous. I still think that that 8 or 9 win season is very doable, which is a massive improvement on last year. It really is. So that's where I'll leave it.
No, again, not just because of Julio, but I am going to have an eye towards Tennessee just because I think Ryan Tannehill is another good case study. Now he doesn't have Arthur Smith, who that I believe helped rejuvenate him. Now, what does he do with Todd Downing as his play caller? Does he take a step back? Kind of like, I don't think Matt Ryan took a step back necessarily. I mean, we did see him have a great year with Sarkisian, but is Todd Downing closer to Dirk Cutter than he is to Arthur Smith? That'll be fascinating. And again, we cover the Falcons, but it's an interesting point. And that's what makes the NFL fun is all the storylines and some of the things to follow. But anything else you guys want to talk about? You want to get out of here? Anything you want to plug on the site? Obviously, Hawks. It's been a great week. NBA free agency's going on. We'll see what happens with John Collins.
Put that shirt up, Jake.
Oh yeah, we
definitely pick up some of the merch. That's the golf one, right?
Super cute. Yeah.
Guys are twinning tonight. If you watch the video stream, make sure you do so. Obviously, we're on all podcast platforms, but we usually get the YouTube stream out, a day later. So make sure you're checking it out there. Anything else you guys want to add? Or should we get out of here?
I got 5 observations of camp so far coming out probably tomorrow, 5 days after the 5 days of practice. Just my thoughts, and a lot of them actually correlate with the podcast tonight, So,
and I will say, props to you, Alex. We talked about our 53-man roster prediction, which we'll update probably right before the 53-man roster. But we talked about where we stood right now, and you had TJ Green, you had Jonathan Bullard. Both guys, Bullard got some first-team reps today in padded practice. TJ Green's been a guy that's been talked about a lot, impressing. So kudos to you. Only one I really saw talk about that. So certainly their stock's up, and I don't know if I'm going to put Green in right now if you had to ask me, but definitely have inserted Bullard in there. I think, especially given some of the injuries to nose tackle or guys, on the COVID list to nose tackle, I think a guy like Bullard maybe makes more sense. His versatility to play up and down the D line. Mm-hmm. And one thing that'll be interesting, again, we got new decision makers. But, they're carrying over the COVID practice squad rules this year, and you're able to protect 4 guys. Why not stash your backup nose tackle as one of those 4 guys? Rather than waste the roster spot. Everyone always asks me, why doesn't Deidre Sanat suit up? Well, he's a nose tackle, and you don't need a second nose tackle activated on game day. So save that roster spot. So that's something to keep an eye on, with this current group of decision makers, is do they do
that's a good
creative
point.
things like that?
Maybe those running backs too, because it's going to be hard to cut some of them. So someone's going to get cut. I mean,
there's going to be 4 good players protected. I'll tell you that on that practice squad.
So that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I might do something on that. That one of those running backs
definitely. It's worth publishing something on that. But all right, well, appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, special thanks to Scott Bair. We really enjoyed him. I hope you guys do as well, and we'll try to get him back. But for Jake Gordon, Alex Lord, I'm Matt Carley. This has been Talking Birdie. Go Falcons.